the road. I don't think there's anybody that knows more about guiding people through their political careers than Roger.
That's very kind. Jorge and I were friends before this
Mhm.
because, as you know, he's a strong and outspoken supporter of the president,
Yes.
and he's a great friend of the president. The president likes him very much. And he reached out to me because many people were reaching out to him
Mhm.
because of reports that there'll be a vacancy in the state Senate. Many people believe that his current state senator, Brian Avila,
Mhm.
will be appointed to the county commission to fill a vacancy there
When Kevin leaves.
when Kevin leaves to become ambassador
Right.
to Panama.
So real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt you. So just so you guys know, President Trump appointed Miami-Dade Commissioner Kevin Cabrera to be the ambassador of Panama, which means he's going to be confirmed. That still hasn't happened, right?
Correct.
And then he'll be obviously moving to Panama. Therefore, a seat in the commission is going to be open, which the governor gets to appoint. And we think it's going to be,
Brian Avila.
and that is a what?
So he's now a state representative.
Okay.
No, pardon me, he's now a state senator.
Okay.
That would create a vacancy in the state Senate.
Okay.
Obviously, if Avila gets appointed to some other job, could create a vacancy in the state house. Either way, you'd have a special election. So once this became known, people started contacting Jorge saying, seek this seat. We were together at a great event in Amsterdam, New York, a cake match for our mutual friend Anthony Constantino. And he asked me what I thought, and I said, absolutely. And look, he's got his own reasons. I'll let him speak for himself, but he's already proven that he's a warrior. He's already proven that he's a fighter. You can't challenge the guy's commitment to America first, or to his community, or his love of country. And I just think he's got. I've seen it firsthand. He's got a charisma. He's got a fan base. You don't have to tell people in Hialeah who he is. They already know who he is. They already like him. They just not see now. I think we'll see him in a different light.
Okay.
So, like, tell us a little bit about that, George. I'm a huge fan. I tune into all the time. Like, it reminds me of everybody that I grew up with. I grew up in Middle Havana. So you are like you are the personification of every single person that I grew up with, that I respect, the struggle that I came from. So when I heard that you were running, I was like, this representation that Miami needs. So can you tell me a little bit about like what inspired you? What's kind of like, I mean, it's a big step. Politics sucks, honestly.
Yeah.
It's really brave. So
I mean, definitely, you know, it's not for the money or for the fame, because I've been lucky and blessed that with my career I got to accomplish a lot of those things. But it's something, it comes from more like a negative place, and something needs to be done, you know. Me and Roger were talking about it, and what needs to be done is a crusade all through Florida.
bring the mic closer.
Sorry.
No worries, thank you. A crusade all through Florida to fight child trafficking, sex trafficking of children, where South Florida, our area, this whole part, is number 2 in the whole country for this. You know, that's crazy. That's worse than like border towns and stuff. We're number 2 in the country for that.
Number 1 in our state.
Yeah, you know, and the next big place is Orlando. You know, they have a big problem too with it. So nothing's been done. I've been looking at this for numerous years, waiting, hoping that somebody will get in that seat and do what they're supposed to do. So, you know, if it happens that it opens up, I mean, I'm gonna go hard for it, you know, and just fight the same way I ever did in the ring, but just with a lot more intensity and no rush for the wicked, because it's crazy what's happening out there. The numbers are alarming.
Is that like your number 1 motivator? Definitely the sex trafficking.
That's the number 1, number 2, and number 3 motivator.
Yeah.
You know? Especially how the number's not getting any smaller. It's only increasing more and more. So that means that they're sophisticated, they have money, and I don't want to come out saying that politicians are dirty, but politicians are turning the other cheek in a lot of these matters. And man, I'm somebody that's not going to be bought out, you know. You're not going to shush me or make me turn away because you throw money in my face or something like that, you know, so.
When will we know? What is the timeline for that?
It's not clear. I guess I'd say 2 things. First of all, some people run for office to be someone. Other people run for office to accomplish something. He already is someone. He doesn't need this. He's kind of like Trump. Trump didn't need to be president. He was the most famous businessman on the planet. He didn't do it because he needed a nicer plane. He already had a nicer plane.
Right.
He didn't need it because he needed a fancy mansion. He already had a fancy mansion. So he did it at great cost and sacrifice to himself, but he did it for us. He did it because he didn't like the direction of the country. What I like about this is Jorge sees it as a crusade. Everybody talks about the scourge of child sex trafficking, but nobody really does anything about it. People know that the tourist hotels around the Miami International Airport are a hub for this. Yet there is no concerted, focused effort to do something about it, and that's because, in my opinion, the movement needs a leader. There is no leader. Merkava knows it's going on. She does nothing. She does nothing. If you check her contributions, you'll see that she's taking money from the people who own these large tourist hotels. Now, is she taking that money to look the other way? We don't know. But we know that there's been no focused effort. That's because the movement needs a leader. I think this man is the leader. A lot of people, he called me a week ago when we learned that the mayor of Hialeah was stepping down to take another job. People started bombarding him with calls.
That would be good.
Maybe you should run for mayor of Hialeah. But we talked about it. What did you conclude?
On this particular issue, I feel we could get a lot more accomplished. If I'm in Tallahassee, getting our voice heard, speaking for the people, and then coming back and fighting this particular issue. You know, that'd be another great position in the future, but right now I definitely think Senator's more where I can make an impact and change some lives and really fight this system that's going on. Because as Roger said, it's a system. It's a multi-billion-dollar system, just what's happening here in Florida. And it's not that, you know, our cops aren't smart enough or things like that, so they're not trained properly. From a state to a federal to a local level, we don't have the proper training to combat this billion-dollar industry. You know?
There's also a lot that can be done on the legislative level. We don't have enough legislation prioritizing this.
It's getting better, though, I feel.
It's
starting to attack harder, but I would definitely be in the forefront of pushing the sternest punishments possible for human traffickers, you know, especially of minors.
In Tallahassee this week, and I got to sit in on a couple of those human trafficking committees that are going on right now. You know, and there's a lot of issues. I was speaking to one of the representatives in particular, and he was discussing a bill that he's thinking about moving forward that would have a big punishment for people who create child pornography with AI. Where they use pictures of regular children. You'll pick your kids off of the internet, off wholesome pictures that you're posting, and then put that through AI software and create, you know, it's very vile content, and they're trying to find ways of punishing that. And I think that there's so many angles to this that need to be looked at, because it is a huge problem and something that nobody talks. And, you know, for a very long time, the media has told us this is all a conspiracy theory. You know, you talk about talk about human trafficking, and they're like, "Oh, you're QAnon. This isn't true."
No, it's not. It's nonsensical.
How many flights left from here to on the Lolita Express to Jeffrey Epstein stuff? You know, and all these things. Now we're about to find out with Kash Patel and all these right people that are in charge. But I think it could just be a good time to strike against that evil. Now that on the federal level, they're going to be with it. The previous administration, I wouldn't have thought they'd be on board for something like that.
Well, one would say they help cover up a lot of it.
She said move the mic closer.
So with this administration, we know that they're all for it. So if we get on the federal, on a state, and on the local level, now we got the ammunition to go to war with these, you know, with these associations or cartels or whatever you call it.
Have you connected with like the Board of Miami-Dade Commissioners and discussed this with them as well? Like, do you have allies there that prioritize the human trafficking, particularly here in Miami-Dade?
For the human trafficking, yes. There's a couple committees and a couple organizations I've been to, a couple events that they've had.
Yeah.
But as far as like commissioners and politicians,
like the local politicians, Roger's handling that.
I mean, look, he could get elected mayor of Hialeah very
quickly.
Easily. He's beloved in Hialeah. So to me, this is proof that he's not running just because he wants an office. To me, this is proof he takes the tougher race. Not that he can't win; he will win if he decides to run. But he's running for a reason, and it's not to be famous. It's not to be revered. It's not to have your butt kissed. It's because he sees a problem that nothing's being done about.
Nobody's stepping up.
I mean, it's just, and everybody knows it's happening, and everybody talks tough, but nobody really does anything. So I see it as a unique opportunity to take on this problem and expose it, and also expose those who are paying off the politicians to look the other way. So I think his campaign, if he decides to run, his campaign will be historic. I think the message is powerful. More and more people realize the gravity of this problem and the fact that under the Biden administration, they repealed all of the executive orders that Donald Trump put in place to stop the child sex traffickers.
Yeah.
How do you justify that? I don't even know how you justify that, unless, of course, you've been compromised by those who are trafficking children.
There was a lot of things that he did to push back policy that existed to protect children. You know, one of the things that Linda and I have both been very critical of is that one of the first meetings he had was with the teachers union, and he made the decision to stop record keeping of alleged any kind of complaint that had been made on a teacher. So if you as a student made a complaint on a teacher where a teacher had been inappropriate and that investigation maybe didn't lead anywhere, but now 4 years later you get another complaint, and then 2 years after that you get another complaint, now you start seeing a pattern. Well, he got rid of that record keeping. He said it cost too much money, and the end result is that in the year that he did that, I think there was something like 13, 14 different cases that were exposed here in Miami-Dade County as a result of teachers who had been in the system. In particular, 2 cases of teachers that had been in the system for close to 20 years with dozens of victims. The Miami-Dade County School Board had to pay out millions of dollars as a result of it. But this is a problem. And it's just something that they throw money at, right? Because it's like, well, they're going to sue us. Now we're going to throw money at the problem. And then it kind of goes away. But in reality, it's still very much there. And it's a cesspool. And it keeps growing because, like you said, no one prioritizes it.
It's part of the whole woke agenda. So in New York City, for example, the city council did away with the sex offender register. So you don't know whether there's a sex offender living on your block or in your neighborhood. It exemplifies that whole woke mind virus. And unfortunately, you know, we have a lot of liberals in Miami-Dade County, people who want to look the other way on this problem. What was interesting to me is I guess it was 1988, it's the first time I spoke to Donald Trump about the possibility of running for president. And after discussing it, he agreed to take this trip to New Hampshire, just on an exploratory basis, just kind of see what the reaction would be. He spoke to the Chamber of Commerce. It was the first time I ever saw the Trump magic within a political context. When I was in Amsterdam, New York, with Jorge a week ago, I saw that exact same thing. In other words, these were fight fans. These were his fans. This was his movement. Oh, you're with Roger Stone? That's very nice, but I want to get my picture taken with Jorge. It was an amazing experience to see the way people react to him. And if you have that starting out, as Trump did, everybody knew who Trump was. Everybody knows who he is. Everybody already knows that he loves God, he loves his country, he loves Donald Trump. Right. So it's a huge advantage.
And Donald Trump loves him.
And that helps too. So would we welcome a Trump endorsement? Absolutely. If he runs, I would recommend that very highly. And he loves Jorge, so I think it's I think there's a high possibility. While we're on the subject of endorsements, today was a very big day. Today was the day that Ron DeSantis' plan to install his wife as governor to keep the grift going between 2026.
And this is important to talk about because people like us are always ahead of the game. Okay, we're kind of like, that is our MO. We will talk about things that are not very popular at the moment and perhaps ahead of the time and say, this is what's going on. And people will react negatively at first, but then months later, a year later, it happened. So we're now saying it's
I'm sorry about that.
Yes.
Actually, the apologies never come.
No,
The apologies never come. Yeah, rarely.
No, they don't. So when I first said that Ron DeSantis,
October 2022, you said it in our podcast. You said that Ron DeSantis would be running against Donald Trump, and you were called divisive, and we were called divisive for platforming you when you said he's running a shadow campaign. He's trying to astroturf MAGA. October 2022, that everybody was losing their shit because they're like, why would Trump attack DeSantis? Well, because what you guys didn't realize was that he had already been running a shadow campaign for a year, something that Rogers, infinite wisdom, had already targeted months prior to that.
And if you go back and look, and I posted it the other night, well over a year ago, probably a year and a half ago, I said that Cassie DeSantis would run for governor. Because the governor, for those who don't know, is term limited. He cannot run again. They've gotten used to the lifestyle. They've got used to the private jets and the private clubs and
She has a hairstylist.
and the money and the long length gloves.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, 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 yeah,
In the
yeah.
middle of summer.
You know, and the Hermes purse that costs thousands of dollars. Look, their net worth is really skyrocketed. I'm
Right.
kind of interested in how that could possibly be. But it became very clear to me that he would try to dominate this contest. Now, I think you saw a bunch of polls earlier in the week, but none of them tested Casey DeSantis. So Byron Donalds, who I support, now who the president has publicly endorsed today, kind of a preemptive endorsement. So he's endorsing a guy who hasn't even formally announced that he's a candidate yet. But it's an open secret in political circles that Byron is going to run. The president has now endorsed him. I would guess that if you tested Casey DeSantis in a statewide poll, a very high name ID, she benefits from the high name ID of her husband, although there are some in MAGA, as you know, who will never support either one of them now, that he's shown that he's an ungrateful, backstabbing weasel.
You call him a mutant.
Who would never have been governor but for the good graces of Donald Trump. I mean, people who don't live in Florida may not remember this, but I remember it.
Yeah.
He was running at 8% in the polls. His campaign coffers were empty. All 60 plus Republican county chairmen in Florida had endorsed Adam Putnam. Every member of the congressional delegation, except for Matt Gaetz, had endorsed Adam Putnam. Every single member of the state Senate, every Republican member in the House, the Senate president, the Speaker, they had all endorsed Adam Putnam. And he was ahead 58-8. And then just in one tweet, I mean, Adam Putnam said himself was like a nuclear explosion. He skyrockets ahead of DeSantis skyrockets ahead of Putnam. And then, frankly, Ron was such a piss-poor candidate that Donald Trump had to change his schedule to come to Florida 3 times in the last 2 weeks to drag Ron DeSantis over the finish line by a mere 25,000 votes. Now, you would think at 42 years old that he would have some sense of gratitude, but no.
But a lot of it has to do with his wife because she wanted to be first lady. And people, you know that. Well, internally, people know that.
Well,
But-
it's kind of like Adam and Eve. There's no question. Wasn't it Eve who said,
Yes.
go ahead and eat that apple,
Yeah.
everything will be fine?
Yeah.
You know? I think that's probably true. I think those who say, well, if he had just waited,
Yeah.
he would have been the candidate in 20. I think the flaws in his character and the flaws in his record and the flaws in his alliance with the Bushes and the other neocons in the party,
Would have inevitably
they
still
would
come
have
out.
inevitably been
I think
exposed.
the
anyway.
assumption, I think that the assumption that most people make is like, well, if he would have waited, then he had a higher potential of getting Trump's endorsement, which is, and arguably that's who's going to be the next governor, whoever Trump endorses, and now we have an endorsement. I think that he's overplayed his hand in thinking that he has more influence in the state of Florida than Donald Trump does. And, that's definitely something that's been fabricated by his media team and his comms team that we know is very active, continuously looking to try and find ways of overshadowing Trump's work or trying to take credit or astroturfing his accomplishments, as we recently saw with the battle between the legislator and the governor, and the fact that he wanted to take full control of the deportation process so that he can claim, Florida wins as opposed to national wins for Donald Trump.
Well, as you know, he loves press releases. So he puts out a press release saying
And he loves news conferences too.
he's going to ban Red China, Communist China, from buying land in Florida.
Yeah.
Then when you look more closely at his proposal, what he really does is he just bans them from buying land that's contiguous to a national security site. So the Chinese could buy up huge swaths of farmland or ranch land all across Florida. The reality doesn't meet the headline, but he's just after the headline. So when there's an attempt on the president's life in West Palm Beach, the governor announced he's going to launch his own investigation with the vast powers of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Have you heard any more about that since he got his
No.
headline?
No, absolutely not. I actually posted about that recently a couple of weeks ago, and Brian Griffin's burner account, Max Nerdo, wrote back and said that it had been the FBI that had stopped the local investigation. Because they think that we don't understand how it is that local law enforcement works, that we can't get the sheriff in Palm Beach County to look into this or whatever it may be. So they're trying to justify why it is that there's never been an outcome, but this is something that we've watched repeatedly happen with Ron DeSantis, particularly Linda and I here in Miami-Dade.
His PR machine's really
His
good.
PR machine in particular,
Yeah.
he was going to take this very strong stance on drag shows and children. There was never any legislation that was passed on his desk. There was never any EO that he said or suggested that he was going to pass. It would just create a PR moment. So when Our House Winwood gets caught, Libs of TikTok post a video of a child at a drag show. He's like, we're going to revoke the license for Our House Winwood. Well, Our House Winwood still has their drag shows every single Sunday, never stops serving liquor. Kids are still welcome. He did the same thing with the Hyatt, with the James, is that the James O. Knight Center?
Yeah.
They also hosted a kid-friendly drag show. He immediately released his press release, has his press conference. We're going to come after the Hyatt and we're going to revoke their liquor license. Linda spent a week sitting at the bar of the Hyatt waiting for them to cut her off and tell her we no longer have a liquor license. It never happened. And this is something that we continuously see.
Yeah, he's
he's
really good at PR.
Fighting DEI in Florida, and his idea of fighting DEI was using the power of the governor's office to go after a private company, Disney. It's like that's PR. That's not solving the problem long term, which would have created a solution in Florida for DEI hires. So it seems like we continue to watch this pattern repeat itself with Ron DeSantis, where I like to call him the bare minimum. He likes to put out these very vast statements of things that he's going to do and accomplish that never really seem to follow through.
Jorge and I were talking about this the other day. So President Trump is very serious about the possibility of doing away with the income tax. And Scott Bessent, who is your Treasury Secretary and a brilliant guy, a libertarian, outside-the-box thinker, totally loyal to the president, but a brainiac. I mean, really smart guy. They're very serious about this. Now Ron DeSantis puts out a statement saying that he's thinking of doing away with the property taxes.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So we don't have an income tax in this state. Our sales taxes are already high. Exactly how will we finance even the trimmest government? I mean, how would you do that? Again, he sees Trump succeeding with a message in which, in Trump's case, is sincere, but he's quick to get out a press release, and then there's no follow through. I mean, we both agreed if we get rid of the income tax, it'd be a great thing.
Yeah. I agree with you.
Do you foresee that if George gets in the race, that Ron DeSantis would try and endorse somebody opposing him?
What's the district?
What's the number? Is it
39.
39.
Where is that?
Hialeah,
Hialeah.
largely. I mean, yeah, this could become a proxy fight, absolutely, but you really want to take this guy on?
Yeah.
You want to take him on?
Wait, I really want to ask George, just because I know there's like UFC fans. Like, how did you start your career? Because I know it's like Little Havana, right? Like you were saying. How did you start your UFC?
Start of your
like your start of your
career.
fighting career.
I fought numerous fights all over the world before I got to the UFC. So I was 28, 29 years old.
But did you start like street fighting first?
I started street fighting when I was young, and those are the ones that I got most known for. But from there, I literally worked myself all over the world fighting in different promotions that are no longer here, that
don't exist anymore.
They don't exist anymore. And I ended up in one promotion called Strike Force, which the UFC ended up acquiring. And that's how I became part of the roster. But before that, yeah, I used to like fight in the streets of Miami.
Really?
Like a little bit of money.
Illegally, obviously.
Yeah,
right?
back then those were the low-key ones. Nobody knew till like an hour before the event. They'd take everybody's phone.
Oh, shit.
You couldn't be filming. They would
Yeah,
take everybody's
yeah.
phone and give them back. You know, so it was some rowdy times. It was fun.
Nice.
And back then it was like highly illegal. But that also showed me a lot of things and also gave me a lot of confidence, because that environment wasn't controllable a lot of times. There was no doctors as well as no nurses, no real like referee that's part of a commission, no commission. You know, there was a lot of things that could go south. So stepping in there gave me a lot of like fire and confidence that I could deal with any thing that could happen in the fight, because now in a fight there is doctors, there's referees, there's nurses, there's a commission to oversee that everything is legal. So it definitely,
There's more. That was all about like survival. Truly, every
Yeah.
time you got in the ring.
those are different, you know. And then fights could break out during your fight or after your fight, you know, because you went there with your friends and they got in a fight with the other friends. So it was completely different than pro fighting, you know. But it was just a stage in my life.
We have Miguel in the comments says that street fighting
With
on
Kimbo
YouTube
Slice.
with Kimbo Slice. Things
Yeah.
that I remember. Those are
Yeah.
yeah.
So back in
Those
the
are
day.
back in the days.
And the comment I've been reading the comments, watching public reaction to Jorge's going
Potential.
public that he's considering this. My favorite one is the one that says, the child sex traffickers
I think it's too far.
about to get a flying knee to the head. I love this. I
Yeah.
love this.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Just get ready for like, you know, nonsense to deal with.
I mean,
that's
more prepared. Like, what are they gonna say
That's
about
true.
him? It's
You know, I've been dealing with it my whole life. You
Right.
know, whether it's my opponent or it's the media or it's the fans or it's the fans of my opponent. Like,
there's always someone talking
someone's
shit
gonna be,
trying to
you know,
right.
there's gonna be some people that hate me and there's gonna be some people that love me. So
No, I think it's also part of the blueprint of what we're watching right now. Like you said, he doesn't have to do this. Neither did Trump. Neither did Elon. And I think it's kind of the blueprint of the people that we're watching right now that are making huge sacrifices. Because you have no need for this, right?
and it's kind of how the forefathers also, I feel, set up, you know, legislation and all these different branches where don't make a career or living out of it. Come give back your due diligence to society. Come back and contribute your part.
Yeah.
And don't be a piece of, you know,
Right, absolutely.
I would go
A true public service.
I would go a step
Public
further.
service.
If he decides to run, there will be an effort to smear him because he scares the crap out of the people who are running this human trafficking. He scares the hell out of the people who are trafficking children, and they know he's an unstoppable force. I mean, you can't buy him off. You can't scare him. That I can guarantee you. So he's their worst nightmare. You know how rough and tumble Miami-Dade politics is.
Yeah.
So there'll be attempts to smear him, but it won't work because the people in this community already know it. They already know his record. They already know what he believes in.
I imagine he's going to get a lot of support from the community, even some of the bigger political figures, because I mean the popularity is undeniable, and again, you're a representation of Miami. Like you are the 305.
That's
so
true.
I can't imagine anybody local coming up against you from a political standpoint and surviving that, you know, because the whiplash would be insane. Like people do support you, you're real, and I think that when people see you, they
and
see
my
themselves.
politics is very out there as well, you know,
Yeah.
where I stand since it was way before it was cool to stand on that side, you know. So I'm definitely not doing it for money or endorsements, because I actually lost money in endorsements in endorsing Trump back then, and it's something that I would never change, you know, because I'm not gonna be silenced any way, shape, or form.
It's kind of interesting. We won't mention names, but a number of sitting state senators contacting him, urging him to run, saying if you get in, I'll endorse you. I mean, I think politicians, they want to get out ahead of the crowd,
Right.
and I think they already see that if he runs, he'll win. Just
Right.
like Trump, if he runs, he'll win. They already see that.
For smaller races like that, because those are like district races, I do think that, like for example, the insurance crisis. There's like a big insurance crisis in Florida, right? Like that's something that like people are looking for an answer, for solutions to that. That's a big deal. You're gonna have to, I think, expand a little bit more, right? What else do you think would be his platform to appeal?
Well, those are my 1, 2, and 3, because I also feel that, you know, there's like 3 stages to it, and then there's obviously other things that I'm gonna run on, but
Right.
it's not just passing legislation and getting the biggest funding I think possible for these agencies, but there's another step to it as well. It's what happens with these kids when we save them, right? When we get them out of the system, and a lot of times, some of these kids end up back in that, you know, deep hole,
Right.
you know, because the foster parents, the people that they go through. So I want to use as much power as I can to give them something else instead of just returning to like some foster care system with, you know, 2 people of the same sex that, you know, as we're seeing now more and more often, are taking advantage of these kids and stuff. So that there has to be like something else as well to greet these kids. So,
Yeah, the agencies also have to be. I was reading that something like again, in Tallahassee this week, they had some kids that were coming from foster care to advocate for legislation against trafficking, and one of the numbers that they put up was that because it's not just there's not just a sex trafficking, despite that sadly being the majority. There's also work trafficking that's going on. Like some of these kids are being put into like labor camps to work slave labor here in our country. Like we're not. This isn't China, third world stuff. Like this is happening in our country, which is
seeing it.
Absolutely, and it's only being a bigger problem over the last couple of years as a result of a wide open border that has allowed these grown military aged able-bodied men to come in through our borders with children that they're not even related to, and we've seen that happen.
Yeah,
that a high percentage of these kids that are coming into the border are not coming in with their parents. They're coming in with
for 4 years they got away with murder, literally.
Yeah.
So we gotta hit them back.
I mean, I do think it's important to note that with the confirmation of Kash Patel today, you now have the Justice League totally in place.
Yes.
I mean,
which I wanted to ask you about.
I mean, you already have Tom Homan, who is honchoing the effort to round up and deport illegals. You have Robert F. Kennedy, who's deeply committed to exploring the causes of the chronic childhood diseases. Taking a hard look at how drugs are approved and how they're mandated in some cases. Taking a hard look of why there are additives in our food that are not allowed in Europe in the same brands, but we have them here. This is, I think, very encouraging. Now you add Tulsi Gabbard, who they really tried to smear. Really tried to smear. That's because she, like Jorge, she scares the crap out of them. She's a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. She's a combat veteran in Iraq and Kuwait. Yet, they've never answered this question. Why would you put her on a secret domestic terrorist watch list at TSA? And in essence, spying on her whenever she's traveling.
That's crazy. When did that happen? I didn't know about that.
This happened during the Biden administration.
Oh,
the last 2 years of the Biden administration.
Okay.
I think it happened in the wake of her criticizing Kamala Harris, who she destroyed in that debate, as you may recall.
Murdered her.
No
Just
way.
destroyed her.
It's bad. It's the worst whooping I've seen Kamala.
Yeah.
It was a whooping.
That's crazy.
And they still have not come up with a rationale as to why you would take a war hero, somebody who already has one of the highest security clearances as a lieutenant colonel, and you smear them just because they don't want to send billions more to Ukraine, just because they're concerned in Syria that if the people who have just taken over, last time they had control, you had the mass slaughter of hundreds of thousands of Christians. You had the crucifixion of children as young as 5. Tulsi Gabbard is concerned about that, so then they accuse her of somehow being in the tank for Assad. Well, Nancy Pelosi went and met with Assad. Senator Bob Torricelli went and met with Assad. That doesn't mean anything, but they really tried to smear her. Just think about that lineup. Now you add Kash Patel. This is an all-star lineup for the cleanup of the country. Now add him at the state level. This is an all-star team.
I think we're definitely seeing that. And I'm really proud of what's going on in Florida, too. Like the fact that Donald Trump has quite literally picked so many of his cabinet picks have come from Florida says a lot about what we're doing down here. And one of the things that I very often talk about is, particularly with to briefly go back to the conversation about Ron DeSantis, is that anybody who listens to him would think that he's king of Florida and that the free state of Florida is a direct result of him. And it's actually part of what upsets me the most, because Florida is a result of our legislative body, of our activists, of our groups that come together to make Florida free. During 2021, and everyone knows we fought this so hard, like we still had kids masked up in Florida as a result of the governor signing his emergency order month after month after month after month. That continued the federal
counties continue to use that as an excuse to mask up the kids.
To continue to mask up the kids. And I think that there's so much for us to be proud of right now from the state of Florida.
Well, you made a very good point. I really do think that Pam Bondi, who was a great attorney general here, he's among the president's very best appointments. Also, Mike Waltz is the national security advisor. Great appointment. But it's important to note we have 2 vacant congressional seats here in Florida that won't be filled until the special election in April, which means our margin in the House, which was 3, is really right now it's one. This is why Elise Stefanik has not resigned. That's why she hasn't been confirmed yet, although she was approved in committee.
Been confirmed?
But she hasn't resigned yet, so the seat's not vacant yet. And I don't think they will move to confirm her until the 2 seats in Florida are filled in the April special election. And the Republicans will win both those seats.
Give us your prediction, Roger, because you're very seldomly wrong. What do you see Kash Patel's first 30 days looking like?
Well, I first of all, I have no particular knowledge. Just because he and I
all
are
speculation, right? Let's make sure we get that.
Just
clear,
because he and I are very good friends doesn't mean that he shares all of his plans. I think he's going to do exactly what he said he's going to do. He's going to depoliticize the agency. First of all, I think he's going to look within, and those, I don't think it's at the agent level. I mean, when the FBI raided my home, it's amazing how many of the 29 agents who were in my home or who were outside my home, they'd look at me, they'd roll their eyes, or they'd shrug their shoulders, or they'd wink, as a way of telling me, I don't want to be here. I don't like this. This was ordered out of Washington.
Right.
So I think he's going to look at the mid-level and the leadership level first to see where the politicization, where the weaponization has taken place. I think you're going to see a lot. They've already fired a bunch of people. They're going to fire a bunch of more people.
What about the Epstein files?
Yeah.
Because he said that they were going to release that, like,
Day
at
one.
day
He
one.
said day one.
He said that we're going to release that.
I would like to see that. On the other hand,
It's on that Lolita Express.
I think that you're going to find that we know most of it, because if you go back to my book, The Clintons' War on Women, the longest chapter in the book is about Jeffrey Epstein.
Really?
I was really the second author, the second person to report on Epstein, the way that they first prosecuted him in Florida. They could have charged him with child sex trafficking. They could have charged him with statutory rape. Instead, they charged him with 1 count of solicitation. That's like going into a bar and trying to pick up a hooker. And then when the police chief of Palm Beach complains about it to the state's attorney, he upgrades the charge to solicitation of a minor, which is still undercharging considering the evidence that the undercover investigation by the Palm Beach police, city police, had uncovered the entire ring. So he hires the best known and most expensive lawyers in the country, kind of a dream team of lawyers, and he gets off with, I believe it's an 18-month sentence, of which he only serves 15 months. But unlike every other person convicted of a sex crime in the state of Florida, he's not sent to a state prison. He's allowed to serve his sentence in the air-conditioned new wing of the Palm Beach County Jail. And he only has to be in jail, I get this right, from 6 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. So pardon me, it's the other way around. So
Right.
he has to be in jail from 10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning. The rest of the day, he's free to go wherever he wants in the state of Florida. And the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office is basically providing a security detail for him. They're ferrying him around. So I'm anxious to see the list. But if you look at my book and you look at the published material regarding the manifest, the FAA manifests of his plane, we know a lot of these names. And why are them a disproportionate number of Democrats? Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you being one of the first people to out publicly speak on this, how they've tried to smear you.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
They've said that you were on the plane, that you were out on the island too.
Yeah, it's hysterical.
It's actually the craziest story that they could potentially
No, we
make
know
up
it was
and-
Stone because we saw the Nixon tattoo on his
Right,
back.
right.
Yeah. Somebody
correct.
commented on a video.
Yeah.
And the best part, he was wearing a bull
bull's
mat.
head,
Okay,
yeah.
fine. So this comes up on 4chan, occasionally comes up on X. But if you want to say that, that's fine. Put your name on it. Put your name on it
Correct.
so I can sue you. No one will ever take credit for this. They say, oh, well, somebody saw or the chauffeur claimed. It's all nonsense. I'm the first person in the country really to expose Epstein. There was only one guy ahead of me who wrote for Gawker, Nick Bryant, a brilliant investigative reporter. In my book, I give him full credit for being the first guy to publish the Little Black Book, to being the first guy to publish the FAA manifests. But that's a particularly ridiculous smear.
Crazy. They always do that.
Do you think that now that the Dream Team is in place, do you think that we're going to see some justice corrected for the injustices that those closest, I mean, you lived it, right? Your wife dragged out of your home in the middle of the night. Do you think that there's going to be some vindication for us and that these people are going to be held accountable for the things that they very much illegally put Donald Trump to and his closest allies and his supporters? You know, we know people that were dragged out of their homes in the middle of the night just for attending January 6th, that they've been put through for the last, 8+ years.
It's a difficult question, and here's why. I learned the hard way that if you're a Republican or a conservative or a libertarian or a free thinker, if you're not a left-wing Democrat, you cannot get a fair trial. There will not be a fair trial in the District of Columbia. So I've now concluded, for example, that the Durham investigation was a fugazi, it was a fraud. They were just trying to stall us for 5 years. There was so much uproar among Trump supporters and average Americans who wanted to get to the bottom of who created the Russian collusion hoax, that they stalled for 5 years to make sure the statute of limitations ran out so that nobody would be prosecuted. But the truth is, when Durham finally prosecutes the guy at the very, very bottom of the totem pole, it's like prosecuting the guy who drove the getaway car for double parking while you let the bank robbers get away, and even that guy ends up being acquitted because it's the District of Columbia. So if you charge, let's take the most epic criminal of them all, okay? John Brennan, an admitted communist, the guy who converted to radical Islam in a ceremony when he was the CIA station chief in Rita, the guy who signed the visas for 4 of the hijackers who attacked America on 9/11, the father of the Russian collusion hoax. He goes out and tells the intelligence services in Britain and Canada and New Zealand and Australia, gives them a list of 26 friends or supporters of Donald Trump, I'm on that list, to be surveilled, to be bumped, as he said, which means spied on. This guy is conceivably guilty of treason. Now, there's no statute of limitations on treason. And it would, I'm not an attorney, it'd be up to a grand jury to determine whether or not there was grounds to charge him. But if he went to trial in D.C., it wouldn't matter because no jury there will convict him. That is a very serious problem. There's one way to get at it, and that is for the speaker to hold field hearings across the country and subpoena those who got the preemptive pardons from Joe Biden. Now, they cannot refuse a subpoena because if they do, they'll be jailed the way Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro were. Right. And because they accepted the pardon, they cannot plead the fifth in their questioning. So if they either refuse to show up, they could be charged, or if they show up and lie, they could be charged, or if they show up and refuse to answer questions, they can be charged. That is one way to get the attempts to get justice outside of D.C.
But to some degree, it's created a catch-22 for them now, where, at a minimum, the court of public opinion, if they are deposed, when they are deposed, is going to be out there to judge them. So even if they don't get justice in D.C., they're going to have to answer to the will of the people that will undoubtedly change the perception of how it is that they see them once all of this becomes public.
Well, look, when you're given a pardon, you have to accept the pardon. I accepted the pardon because I knew that even if I could get to appeal in the District of Columbia, the facts, the rules, the law, the Constitution, none of these things matter in D.C. They just don't matter. So it was a hopeless situation. But Adam Schiff accepted his pardon. Why would he? If he's why would he accept? Right. Why would he accept the pardon if he didn't do anything wrong?
What about the whole crime family? The Biden crime family. The Biden crime family. Yeah.
These people would steal a hot stove. I mean.
Yeah. Read the super chat.
Yeah, give me just a minute, guys. I want to go over these super chats and thank our followings. Let's start off with Joe, writing from the Lotus, says we're sending our best from the Lotus. Our friends
See
over
you guys
at the Lotus.
In a little bit.
Mark Anthony Salvat says, Linda, thank you and Bella for this podcast. To Roger's point, I believe that George will definitely be these people's worst nightmare, and that's exactly what we need. Someone relentless. P.S. Who's next for Hialeah Mayor?
Who's next for Hialeah Mayor?
Any thoughts?
I'm uncommitted. Put me down as uncommitted at
We'll
this
have
time.
you back when as they get closer.
I mean, I've known more Hialeah mayors. It seems like every third person I meet down here was mayor of Hialeah at one time or another.
Yeah.
It's like a rite of passage towards something else. Do you have to be in the city of
Who?
Hialeah?
But we don't know who's gonna go for it.
We're not sure. I think that it's really going to depend. Bovo's done an excellent job, so
Yeah.
I would imagine that
Yeah.
whoever Bovo decides to endorse is likely, has a good chance.
Unless, of course, Donald Trump endorses a candidate.
Unless Donald
I
Trump.
mean, he got into the sheriff's race here and he endorsed a candidate for
Yeah,
sheriff.
and she won.
And she won.
and she
by a
won
lot, yeah.
Which
our
has more to
sheriff
do with him than
Yeah,
it has to do
of
with
course.
significantly. I think that we always knew, especially in such a packed race,
Yeah.
because we had. I think at some point there was like double-digit candidates, but it had gone down on the ballot. I think there was 9 candidates for that race. So, Donald Trump's endorsement definitely moved the needle there. And then we've got our friend David Berg, who helps us keep the lights on every single time we're live. And he says, been a fan of Gamebred since backyard YouTube days and saw you win the OG BMF belt November 2019 in MSG. Super excited for your future in Florida politics. I'm loving the new studios, ladies. Glad to have you both live. First time since America's golden age began last month.
That's so true.
Absolutely. It's been an incredible 30 days. Talk to me a little bit about that. What would you guys say has been your favorite part of the last 30 days? I'll let you go first, Roger, and then we can
Thank you, David.
George's perspective.
Boy, that's a tough choice. Is it outlawing men playing in women's sports, or is it ending
yeah.
the DEI policies that destroyed our military?
Oh, yes.
Or is it ordering that those
yes.
who were fired from the military because they refused to take the vaccination get their back pay? I mean, it's every day is like Christmas with Donald Trump. There's so many accomplishments.
Every day
here.
is like Christmas.
And it's
with
barely
Donald
been
Trump.
a month. It's
Yes.
barely
It's
been a
barely
month.
been a month. What about you, George? What do you say it's kind of like one of your highlights over the last 30 days? I know it's hard to pick. It's been an impressive 30 days.
Everything that Roger touched on, 100%. The wars, it feels like Ukraine and Russia might soon end, hopefully. That'll be amazing.
Yeah.
That'll be stellar, What's going on with Hamas right now, Israel, I think if somebody could bring an end to that, it's also Trump, So it's not just for America, but it's for the whole world. When this guy's in power, as they say, peace through strength. And it never shows more than when this guy is in that seat,
Absolutely.
He's trying.
It's crazy,
That's very true.
I mean, he's very diplomatic, Like,
Oh,
he goes
also
in there.
the illegal border crossings, which is like down to
Yeah.
like a 900%
Yeah.
down. Something
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Something
I
crazy.
think that's definitely one of my favorite parts,
that-
too,
it-
the
it's
illegal
too
border
much.
crossings.
It almost feels like it's a simulation or something because it's going too good, too smooth right now.
But
It almost feels that way.
I guess one of my all-time favorites is the way that Trump kicked Zelensky to the curb today.
Oh, today that was great. That
He got one
was
thing
great.
wrong. He called him a moderately successful comedian. I don't think he was ever that successful as a comedian.
No.
I mean, he's clearly an actor hired to play the part of a president.
Right. Right.
I've had it up to here with this guy too.
Yeah.
You realize how short he is?
Yeah, he's tiny.
He's very
yeah,
short.
yeah. Well, I think we used to report on the war. Like when it first started, we even had a reporter that was in Donbass, which is the area, one of the only reporters that was there.
That was English speaking, like a
But it was really difficult to try to get people, like even back then, there was a lot of like propaganda being thrown from the Ukrainian side, like so much propaganda. They said that they had bombed the synagogue. I mean, that these people were shooting schools. It was so much.
They flooded with information.
Right, with so much information. And we kind of got tired of reporting on it because it was just like so much. And, people, a lot of Republicans have this boomer neocon mentality, like the 1950s Cold War. So they always want to say just Russia's the bad guy. And it's a lot more complex than that.
It is.
With
And I
the
think
war.
same thing with the conflict in the Middle East as well, right? Like it's really difficult to convince people that there's propaganda on either side. I think when
Right.
you're looking at these wars, so there are issues that are definitely significantly more complex than just here's the good guy and
Some Mike Pence said yesterday saying Russia started this war with their brutal invasion. Now, I would argue we started this war when we violated our signed agreement, the Budapest Memorandum, and a second signed agreement, the Minsk Accords, in which we agreed that if the Russians allowed the reunification of East and West Germany, that we would not push Ukraine into NATO, which really means that we would not allow NATO missiles pointed at Russia or bioweapons labs throughout the country on the border of Russia. And Putin told us repeatedly that that was his line in the sand, that if we insisted on continuing to do that, they would have no choice. So we provoked this war.
We did.
Yeah,
And we
did.
And we did so illegally and in violation
Right.
of agreements that we had signed.
Yeah, we did. We did provoke it. That's true. And also, there's been a lot of evidence that shows that the U.S. has helped train the neo-Nazis Azov battalion who are in that area. And they're like very brutal. They're like animals. They do a lot of bad shit. So
Yes.
not the best thing
And
that we can
Zelensky
do.
admits that he can't account for half the money. So we sent this guy $350 billion while we have homeless veterans in Miami.
I know some places where they can start looking for that half.
Let me ask you, we're getting to the end of our show, but for young people that want to get involved in politics, you've been around for years. What is your advice? And how did you get involved? How did you start your political
Well,
He's
career?
got the best story.
You got,
Well, I want them to hear about it.
I mean, you got to start as a volunteer. I mean, this is not the thing about politics. Is it looks easy from the outside. People think, oh, you put up some yard signs and you run around and talk to everybody. It's not.
Yeah.
It's much more complicated than that. But I think you have to get in at the grassroots.
Okay.
And the first thing you do is find a candidate. His campaign would be a perfect example. His campaign, if he decides to run, will be a magnet for young people who want to get involved and make a difference. He will have more volunteers. It will be amazing. It will be citizen politics at the grassroots level. So if I were living in his district, or even if I was living just outside of his district, or frankly, for that matter, any place in South Florida, and I wanted to make a difference, I would go volunteer for his campaign when he announces it.
I think that that's one of the most important things that, I mean, Roger's been doing this for a very long time, but we got into activism in 2021 as a result of COVID. And I think that that's one of the most important things that I've seen as far as like winning elections go is, a lot of these bad people, usually bad people have bad money. They've got all of these NGOs or donors that are pumping money into their races.
Yeah.
And money wins elections as a result. That money gets you people to knock on doors, people to do phone banking. A mailer campaign in a small district is going to cost you anywhere between $12,000 to $15,000. That's a lot of money. And people don't realize that the only way that you counter bad money is by going out there and donating your time, volunteering your time to these candidates. They may not have, the support or even the desire, because you have no need to pay somebody to support you. You're going to have organic support. Sometimes, the average grassroots candidate doesn't have the luxury of also having a platform that they build and name recognition like you have. But the way that we stop bad people is by, like Roger just said, volunteering our time. Because if every grassroots candidate has to pay $20 an hour for one person to knock on doors, imagine what we could do if you had 5 volunteers willing to do that for free out of passion of just saving our country and, more importantly, our community. Because a lot of these are like, especially in these local races that affect us so much in our community.
Yeah.
There'll be no shortage of excitement. There'll be no shortage of people. There'll be no shortage of money. There'll be no shortage of volunteers if he decides to run. I've already seen it. I can read the comments. When I repost his stuff, people are reposting me saying, you've got to convince him to run. I don't think he needs to be convinced.
Yeah.
Because he sees a clear path. And again, he's running for the right reasons. He's not doing it because he wants to be somebody. He already is somebody. He's doing it because he sees a specific problem that nobody's doing anything about, and he knows he can make a difference.
Yeah.
I respect that. I really respect that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like politics will be something where it's like one and done, Senate seat, I win, serve my terms? Or do you kind of see like a long-term potential to public service for your community?
I'm gonna see how much change and impact I could really do this term around, and if that's where I need to be at, that's where I'll stay. If something in the future, is like more powerful, or I could, really
Make
do more
more of a
damage there,
difference.
then I will 100% go that route, and go to that next seat or position, wherever it would be. But man, we could talk hours about this. It's disgusting what's going on in South Florida and Disney World as well in Orlando.
Yeah.
It's really, this place has more cameras than like Fort Knox, and yet kids disappear from there always. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, it's only time to do one thing right now, and it's fight that evil. Roger was saying earlier, it's a crusade against all these individuals that are on the wrong side of the tracks. Like,
Yeah.
if you're for that, we got to get you out of here.
And Donald Trump has really created the perfect environment to be able to tackle this very real problem. Because, like you said, it really is one of those things that for a long time, we watched it happen with Ana Paulina Luna, where she's been so adamant
about human trafficking.
It's like anytime that the media covers it, it's QAnon. It's not real. It's fake, and it's happened with so many people. Even when Trump has talked about it,
Although I was disappointed last week when she said she was going to subpoena the members of the Warren Commission who investigated the Kennedy assassination. Well, of course, all of them are dead. So she had to do a little.
She had to do a little.
But her heart's in the right
But
place.
they're saying that the audio is bad.
I think she's definitely. I think that because she's been called a conspiracy theorist for such a long time that she's vested in the release. But I feel like what's going to come out of those documents better than anybody. I feel, Roger. I feel like you've got for quite some time you've had a pretty good idea.
If they don't redact them, I mean, right now there are bureaucrats scurrying around trying to figure out how to hide everything. The key thing to remember is that the JFK assassination document archive doesn't contain everything in the hands of the federal government regarding the Kennedy assassination. There are records at the State Department, there are records at the Defense Department, there are records at the IRS, there are records at the FBI, there are records at the CIA. Then there's the police records in Dallas. There's also the police records in Los Angeles regarding the assassination of Robert Kennedy, and the police records in Memphis regarding the assassination of Dr. King. They're going to try to hide things. I saw a terrific letter by Congressman Tim Burchett, who's a MAGA Congress from Tennessee, great patriot, urging the president to broaden his order to ensure that the bureaucrats can't continue to hide stuff. I think that's absolutely key. I've got a piece up on it at stonezone.com right now. It's entitled "What President Trump Must Do to Stop the Deep State from Evading His Full Disclosure Order." You should check it out.
Okay,
It's gonna be
sounds
awesome.
good. Well, guys, thank you
We're
so
so
much
grateful.
for coming to our comeback episode for
Giving
what we
us a
expect.
knockout episode of
Yes.
first comeback back. We're so honored to always have you, Roger, and we're so excited for your future in politics and the ultimate sacrifice. I don't think either of us
Yes.
would ever want to run for politics, so we always appreciate the people that are willing to stand up and answer that call. So thank you guys for
And
what
you
you're
have our
doing, your
support,
fight.
whatever you need. There's one more super chat.
And one more super chat
Or
coming
two.
through. Oh, two coming through. We have Mark Anthony again. He says, "We'll see what God wants for Hialeah. Consciousness shift away from career politicians. Residents want real people with real results. How can I contribute? George should go on Leaders Talk Pod with Jacob." And then we have KS that says, "Oye, como va este año? Hay mucho que descubrir." That's our people, guys. That's gonna be our show for the day. Please follow our guest, Roger. Where can our followers find you?
They can find me at stonezone.com. It's the best place, stonezone.com. Also follow me at Rumble at rumble.com/Roger Stone. The Stone Zone every day, 8 o'clock Eastern. On the weekends, WABC Radio, 77 WABC in New York. Now syndicated in LA, Dallas, New Orleans. I think Nashville's coming online. So it's getting bigger and bigger from 3 to 6 every Sunday afternoon.
Nice.
Go to WABCRadio.com, WABCRadio.com. Any place on the planet you can listen to the show.
And George
And X and Twitter. And Twitter.
It'll all be on the
Of course,
Stone
on
Zone
X,
link.
where I am
Very
Roger J. Stone Jr.
Okay.
Now, do not look me up on Facebook because that guy is not me. Okay, there's a bunch of Roger Stones on Facebook. I was in a restaurant the other day, and a guy said to me, "Hey, Stone, where's that crypto I bought from you?"
Yeah.
I don't sell crypto, and I'm not on Facebook. So,
And George, can you tell our audience a little bit about where they can keep up with you as they're waiting for you to potentially make an announcement?
X, Facebook,
What's your
Gamebred.
address?
Instagram,
Gamebred,
right.
Gamebred Fighter for the Instagram. I think also for
Like
the
your Gamebred
X.
on Twitter as well.
And I think for the Facebook, it's either my name or Gamebred. Either one of those should work
Nice.
out always.
Wonderful. All right, guys, that was a
All right,
great
guys.
show. Sorry about the audio. We had a little bit of issues there, but one of the mics picked it up. It's not that bad, guys. We're going to survive. I promise you. We will be back next week and every week after that because we're not going anywhere, unfortunately, for our enemies.
So next week we're not gonna have a live. Next week we're gonna launch because we're gonna record it on Wednesday,
record
and then
on
we
Wednesday.
launch. We'll premiere on Thursday, but we'll be back live the following week. But there'll be a video next week,
But
for
there'll be
sure.
a video next week that we're doing with some local people that you may want to hear. We're going to be tracking a story.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
It's gonna
I
be
think
great.
you guys are want to hear it, and we'll kind of bring together some of the coverage that we've had over the last couple of years. But thank you guys again for supporting Mostly Peaceful Latinas, and
Thank
have
you guys.
a great night. See you next week.
Bye.